It's Dee on the spot.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Today, before I get to my guest here, I'd like to remind everyone to please give us a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. I have Luigi OG on the show here today. It stands for Original Genius. He's a producer at Locomotive Entertainment, LLC. He's also a booking agent at Lincoln Street Station, music production, sound design at CCM Studios, and producer at Original Genius Records. Luigi, how you doing today?
I'm doing just great. How are you today, Ryan?
I'm doing fine. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what got you into music, kind of what inspired you to pursue music as a career?
Music as a career, for me, was not really my choice, I guess, not my incentive, I guess. My incentive was more or less to just prove to myself that I was able to do it, because I had so many questions when I would listen to music as a kid. You'd wonder, how the hell did they do this? How did they do this? And so it really was a question of mine that I needed answered. So I picked up a laptop, picked up a MIDI keyboard, and started to figure out how a lot of those things were done.
Was there a specific song for you where you were like, holy crap, how'd they do it, that like really introduced it to you?
Yeah, no, Bass Nectar had all those songs. That producer, that EDM artist, was really an idol for me, because he had a lot of synthesizing sounds that I had never really heard in many other songs before, and I really admired him for that and his ability to make me feel something with it. So, and the melodies in it were just beautiful. So to incorporate that with the heavy bass and synth is something I've always loved.
What was your biggest struggle coming out and starting in the musical industry, and how'd you overcome it?
My biggest struggle was probably me starting, just trying to tell myself how I was going to be, trying to become an artist or a producer or an engineer. That's the hard part, is like you start making music and you might say, okay, I'm a beat maker or I'm a producer, but then to make that route that's distinctive from being an artist towards a producer and an engineer, and categorizing yourself and using one name, that has been the hardest part for me, is making people see what I do exactly.
Could you explain for some of the audience members that might not be aware kind of what the difference is between an engineer and a producer when it comes to music?
Yeah, no, most definitely. Actually, that's a really good question, Ryan. Being a producer is somebody who takes the composition and overall adds on to it, not to change the composition, but to make it better, make it sound bigger, make it sound more alive. Music is supposed to sound bigger than life itself. So that's what a producer does. The engineer's job is to make sure that when it was recorded, that the producer doesn't ever have to go back to that stage. Mm-hmm. That's an engineer's job, is to make sure that when it is recorded, it's done just right, and you can always use that audio file now. It shouldn't ever have to be re-recorded. That would be the engineer's mistake.
So do you think that there's a lot of give and take between those two positions? Like they really kind of have to be in sync in order for it to be a successful endeavor?
Oh, 100%. I mean, from the beginning of the song creation, when you record, you have to understand that you're going in a specific direction. And if the producer decides, okay, I think we should go in this direction based upon just the guitar sits there and plays their chord progression, then that is something to account. So that way they can understand that, okay, we need to make sure that this sounds this way, so the producer can take it in that direction.
Yeah. So, when you were starting out, was there a specific genre that you were more interested in to kind of pursue, or were you kind of just willing to do all genres in order to get more acclimated?
I really love all genres. I feel like when you're a musician, that if you limit yourself to only doing one style of music, for me, I always like, I really want to make that type of music. I wish I could make that sound. And I said, you know what, why not? I understand that there's a lot of people that, specifically only want to grow in one genre, but it shouldn't have to be that way. You can grow as a musician itself. Like, you have one life. You might as well play as much as you can.
Do you remember the first piece of work that you worked on and what it was called?
I don't remember the name, actually. It was very different, though. It was something that I had to, try to experiment with, and I had to really understand how I was going to make a song.
So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory into Original Genius Records? How did that come to be?
So Original Genius Records was a thought that I had. It wasn't wasn't really like a goal to go and say, I can do this for you, I can do this for anyone. It was more of like, I'm going to show people that it's not about me as an artist, about me as a producer. It's about having this collective. And the collective is, you know, usually under a record label, so I wanted to make Original Genius Records. But I really wanted everybody to understand that it was about being a family, an interconnected pool of people that all know each other, all support each other. And that is, it can be any company. I mean, really, but that's the goal in that, is to make something that does pursue that end outcome, that goal.
Now, before we did this podcast, we had a little talk, and you kind of explained a little bit also about Original Genius. Could you tell people kind of like the reason behind the name? Because I thought it was a really cool point that you made.
The reason behind the name Original Genius is that anyone can be an original genius. I want everyone to know that if you make original content, you're making genius work right there, because in order to create something original, you have to really think outside of the box. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to pull something out that's like never really been done before. Why would you do that? But of course, you know, it's never been done before. So those people are the geniuses of our world that create, and especially in 2018, if you're creating something original, it's genius. There's almost nothing left.
Yeah. So, how did you get into Locomotive Entertainment? Was that where you started out with, or how did you get in with those guys?
So basically, Locomotive Entertainment was starting off with Malcolm Z, DNA, and Anthony Scott, of course, was all of our mentor and leader. It started off way back when I was like 20. And I had just gotten signed to them. I started making music. Anthony Scott came over to the studio that I had built in my backyard in a barn pretty much. And he was really intrigued. He was like, dang, how do you do all this? And he kept, He kept thinking, and I was like, what are you thinking about, man? He's like, well, I want you to come over and meet my team. And so eventually it started to become like a family, an interconnected thing. And that's when Locomotive was really starting to take off. Now you can see DNA on KS 107.5, working with Hypnotic from Top Flight. Anthony Scott is going around the nation, literally just trying to get them followers from real people, really going out and being his own boost and his own source of promotion, which is just outstanding. Like, to be able to do that is what a dream of a lot of people, to go out and travel and just talk about your music. That would be amazing.
Has there ever been a time where you've been absolutely starstruck by someone that you've met, and if so, who was the person?
I would have to say when I met the first real engineer that I had ever met, Darren Curtis Ganson, the owner of CCM Recording Studios. When I met him, I was kind of like, I was like, okay, hold on. This is a big moment right here. And it's crazy because, you know, you look back at those moments and in your head they get bigger. Mm-hmm. But in the moment, I think I was pretty cool. I was collected.
So, you're also a booking agent at Lincoln Street Station. How did that come to be? Did that just come from your connections being a producer, or how'd you get that gig as well?
Yeah, so a long time ago, I actually started working with the Lincoln Street Station. It started off where I would go in and I would DJ on the weekends and stuff and the weekdays, and I would always show up. I would always be on time. I'd always make sure I was prepared. I'd always make sure that I had a smile on my face and I was ready, and I'd promoted it at least a couple times. Mm-hmm. And from there, you do that consistency. It made a name for myself as somebody who could be a booking agent. And so as time grew on, I started to make many more connections. And with being a producer and an audio engineer, I have plenty of artists that come into the studio and want to know, where can I provide this music as a show? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, hey, at the Lincoln Street Station, I can always help you out. So that's a big thing right there.
Yeah. So when it comes to being a booking agent, is there a specific type of artist that you're looking for when it comes to booking them? Or is Lincoln Street Station kind of open to all genres?
You know, that's actually really interesting that you asked that. So, like, the Lincoln Street Station is really honestly meant for people who are just starting out and wanting to get a name in the industry and wanting to learn how show business really goes. So, like, in the bottom line, if we wanted to bring a $10,000 artist to the Lincoln Street Station, it wouldn't make sense all the way, because then you can't cap that many people out in the Lincoln Street Station to make your money back. But at that point, you also want to make people feel comfortable for what they pay as well. So to start off, the Lincoln Street Station is meant for up-and-coming artists locally who want to have a place to provide their show for their friends and their team, so that way they can practice. Of course, if you get pictures of something successful there, your chances of going somewhere else become much, much higher, because you did do it. You did show that one of the hardest venues to fill up got filled.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be your biggest piece of advice for an artist that like comes up to you and says, hey, I'm starting kind of my own group? What would be the biggest piece of advice that you'd have for that person in order to be successful?
If they're starting their own group, such as a band and musicians, or okay, make sure you all get along. Because if you guys don't like each other, you're gonna kill each other in the end. And it's like, I mean, it may not be physically, of course, but like emotionally, it'd just be drained. You can't make music like that. Music is supposed to come from the heart, and if your heart wants to go somewhere else and your bandmates are telling you to go and stay where you are, it's not the best for you. Maybe you have more to offer the people that you want to inspire.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. That's an answer that we get quite a lot here. And when you're working with artists, how important is it that you guys kind of have like the same vision? Because is there like a lot of meetings that you guys have before you record the music, kind of saying like, hey, this is what I want to do? Or do sometimes they just kind of give you the music and say, hey, can you work with this? How does that work?
So a lot of the time they'll talk with me. A conference call is rare. To find a band that actually gets on the phone together and they all communicate like that, dang, yo, if you can really do that, that's awesome. But that one time that did happen, of course, they wanted to be sure, so they waited until they'd known that everybody was on the same page. So, of course, you definitely want to be on the same page. You don't want to have anybody that's holding back an idea speak up now or forever hold your peace, before you book that time. The studio time booking is like the initiation of, this is what we're going to make, and if you have something idea-wise, save it for the next album or something like that,
Are there ever any concepts or themes that you're unwilling to work with? Is there ever like a line where if someone says, hey, we want to promote this type of music, you say like, oh, sorry, I can't do that? Or are you generally willing to help out all musicians?
Actually, yeah, no. I have no, I don't disregard any genre in music, from ICP to gospel to movie scores to EDM to rap music, whatever it is, I support it. I've had people come in and ask, like, are they going to be able to say their lyrics in front of me? Like, they wonder, am I going to be accepted? And I say, bruh, this is not about that. This is about you. This is your time. Like, that's the biggest thing, is I want them to feel like they can come to the studio, and the studio is a sacred place. You should never have judgment in there. That place is meant for people to inspire others just through a recording, and that takes so much effort right there.
Absolutely. So when they're entering the recording studio, like, what are the basic steps that a band goes through, or a band or artist goes through when they're recording their song? Do they have to, what's like the process they have to go through?
So the process usually is that they'll get in the studio, right? And everybody wants to chill for a moment, gather around and look at the board and admire that for a moment. Then while they're doing that, I'll go get their microphones ready. I'll go make sure that all the instruments that they have, that I'm going to have a proper connection for them, obviously testing all my cables beforehand. I'm not going to mess around with that after I've already gotten everything plugged in and patched. So the biggest thing I would say is making sure that the drummer is comfortable. The drummer, if you're recording a drummer, that man's got to have a perfect temperature in the room. That man's got to have, like, everything's got to be perfect for him. So I would say our biggest focus when we're recording a band is how well our drummer can perform. And our bassist, too, has to have very, very good connectivity with our drummer. So we want the sound there to be really good. A lot of the time it's hard to hear the bass guitar over a recording, especially if you're multi-tracking. So hearing the bass guitar and the drums full in the mix before it's being mixed, it's really important.
For some bands, is it really hard for them to kind of get what the song is going to sound like after the mixing is done? Because some songs that you listen to, if you listen to the original recording, they sound absolutely nothing like the song does after it's been edited and mixed up. Is it hard sometimes for you to convince some bands that, like, hey, this song is going to sound a lot better than it sounds right now, just have some faith in us? Or are most bands generally willing and trusting of you sound guys?
So, like, yeah, and for instance, a lot of these bands, and like I can tell you for one thing that a lot of these bands come in and they are spectacular and they don't really need much done. Mm-hmm. But some people, yeah, they know that they need some stuff done, and yeah, in that case, they'll kind of just expect that. They paid the hourly rate. They're in the studio. They're kind of expecting that. So in a sense, I'm always listening for some way I can kind of tweak it or produce it in that sense to make it sound bigger or better. And a lot of the time, as soon as they step out of the booth, I've done it so many times with so many different plugins. I know exactly where the knobs go. I just have a preset at this point. Just, okay, try this. And then they come out of the booth and they listen to it on the Genelex and they're like, whoa, okay, is that what I just did? And at that point, I just say, that's a 15-second like little rundown of what I can do. Do you want to take that route? Then that's when they open their eyes and they're like, wow, I need to spend some time in here.
Yeah. So, do you ever feel the added pressure of the fact that, you know, you are being paid to do a service and that you have to kind of do something that they like? Do you ever feel any added pressure onto that?
100%. Yeah, sometimes I do, especially when they book a such small amount of time and they expect a lot done. Of course, like I can get things done in that area, but at the same time, as a musician, as a producer, I mean, I still like have a life at home too, and you know, shit can hit the fan too sometimes. But at that sense, you know, you have to be able to separate that moment and be like, okay, now I'm gonna be here for these guys. It can be a little hard, but I always let myself go into the music, and then I find myself right at home again. So that's like why it's my job right there, is because once I become the producer, the engineer, the musician, that's just so comfortable for me that it doesn't really, I don't think about the time or the money. I just get it done. Yeah.
So one of the things that I found out when I was starting this podcast was that I live close to Minneapolis. I'm about 15 minutes away. I figured I'd know the Minneapolis scene because kind of like Prince, Bob Dylan, those guys are all from there. But I was surprised at just the plethora of metal bands there. There's so much metal there. It's definitely the dominant genre. You're from around the Colorado area, is that right?
Yeah, actually, Denver, Colorado.
Denver, yeah. What would you say is the dominant genre in Denver? What music genre really dominates the scene?
Ooh, see, that's difficult. Rock music is pretty heavy down here, but then also you won't go down the street without hearing somebody bump some rap music in their car. Like it's everywhere. The music actually here in Denver is not very like specific towards genre. It's very mixed. And it goes like this week, all of a sudden I've seen a bunch of rock shows. The next week I saw a bunch of folk music, and the next week after that it's like now it's a rave. It's kind of intense, and then Tech Nine comes to town and the whole city paints their face. It's nuts. Yeah. Denver's actually really insane when it comes down to music, and it's very switchy. It doesn't stay for very long. That's why I think a lot of people come to Denver, is because like week to week to week to week, it's like really something different.
Is it hard for a business then if it's like super switchy and it kind of rotates? Is it hard to kind of establish yourself with a certain like genre of music, knowing that it might not be popular the next week, and that you kind of have to like maybe like, oh, I need to get like a rock band now because that's been popular the last few months, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we need to get rap bands now. Do you find that difficult to kind of pin down what's hot at the certain time?
I think that right there is exactly what happens to musicians in their mind. They say, okay, I'm not doing enough. They say, okay, I need to do more. Okay, I need to get a drummer when I'm doing my rap music so that way it can be more entertaining. But that's the thing, is like people don't understand that when it comes down to music, you can make whatever the hell you want. But you have to be able to perform it in a way that it's not just your music anymore. That's the hard thing, is a lot of people say, oh, you know, I want people to walk around talking about my music at my shows. And it's like, you know, like in that case, don't play a show, just play the album, because then they'll talk about your music. But when people play a show, the fans should be talking about what you did on stage, or why it was so spectacular, why they want to come buy another ticket for you to see you play, because you did something different that now when they go listen to your music on your album, it means more. It should always add meaning, everything you do.
Yeah. So we love to hear first show stories. So what was the first show that you DJ'd at, and how did that go? What was the performance like?
The first show that I DJ'd at actually was at Herman's Hideaway. It was the very first EDM show that they had ever done.
Oh, wow.
EDM stands for electronic dance music, if anyone's unaware. I've had a couple people don't know that. But Yeah, no, that was the first show that they had ever done that was electronic dance music. And from there, I put it online. I had 2 months to promote it. It was great. I had like 6 DJs, and people had actually come by and bought tickets. Of course, it was my first show, like the first thing I'd ever done with Locomotive supporting me in that. And then I was like, wow, okay, so this is actually really difficult. Being a booking it, that's when I understood, okay, I'm being a booking agent. I'm also booking my own show. And then I'm also paying these people, and I'm providing a service for the people who buy a ticket. Mm-hmm. That's when I understood, okay, like it's more than just being cool on the DJ equipment. You know, it's like you need to really do so much more. Lights, I had a problem with lights at that show, and then we got it figured out right before everything started. It was like, wow, you know, these things really take some effort. But yeah, that was the first one. Do
you have any like pre-show rituals? We get a lot of bands on here that'll talk about like, oh, they have to have like a beer or something like that to calm them down, or they like all stretch or whatever. What are your pre-show rituals, or do you just kind of like wing it when you get there?
One big pre-show ritual that I have is that day I won't play any music for like on my DJ board. Like I won't go and produce. I won't go and sometimes I do. And it doesn't affect it. Like if I have a client that day, it's okay, but I won't do it myself, not for me, because as soon as I do, I start to come up with ideas, and I'm like, oh, what if I do this? What if and then when I play the show, I try to incorporate too much, and it doesn't always work out as planned. So I try to keep my plan in one area that day of, and when I do get to the venue, I smoke one of my original Genius blunts. And they look kind of similar to this, but that's it, and that's the ritual. I have to get in my zone. Yeah, it's kind of hard because otherwise you have your whole day behind you, and you don't know how to like separate that time. Yeah.
Do you find it hard having so many jobs, like you're a booking agent, music production producer, another producer at two things? Do you find it hard to kind of separate your work life and your regular life, or do you kind of just let it flow in between and kind of just say, hey, music is my career, I'm going to let it take over for a while? How does that work?
You just have to kind of decide what is going to be your life, because kind of what it becomes at one point, you're like, all right, you know, I may have a girlfriend, may have a dog, may have a life, a home, but that revolves around music at that point. Those are the things that you need to decide, is becoming a musician or becoming something in the music industry, anything. It could be the booking agent, it could be the engineer, it could be the producer, the composer. It could be the guy who carries the instruments from the stage to the plane again, you know what I mean? But you got to decide, is that what you want? Is this how you want your life to unravel itself? And music, and for me, is the best, so I love it. Of course, I assume lots of people love it, but it is something serious to definitely think about, you know?
Absolutely. So what would you say is the most undervalued part of the roles that you play, such as producer, music production, sound design? What would the average person kind of not get that you do that is like super important to when it comes to the bands?
When it comes to recording bands, the most important part is directing them. That they don't even see it, they don't realize it. It's just, you know, they're with a professional that knows how to do that, has experience. But when put them on the board themselves and watch it go to chaos versus stay on the board yourself and have them just hound you until you make it happen, of course, right? But it's like you have to direct them. You have to keep everybody happy. Remember, they're in closed rooms and soundproof rooms too. And they can't do anything besides concentrate for 10 hours at a time. These are times that you have to understand. You have to have a sense of charisma. You have to be a little humorous. You can't make, you know, them uncomfortable. They have to stay comfortable in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys are kind of like the directors, like you said, and you got to make the bands feel comfortable. I mean, uncomfortable bands, these guys are usually nervous enough as is, especially in the recording time where they're paying you guys a lot of money. That's their heads on the block. So, I just think the chill environment is a very underappreciated thing. And do you ever have any difficulty with any of you don't have to name specific people, of course, or bands, but do you ever have any difficulty with any of the artists, or is it always kind of a chill environment?
You know, the main time I have difficulty with artists is when hip-hop artists come into the studio and they say, the beat's on YouTube, get it real quick and I'm ready. Okay, and then I'll press record. All right, you ready, man? And yup. and they get going, and they're like, yeah, and then they go, and then they don't really, run it back, and then I end up finding they didn't have any lyrics written down. They're freestyling, and then 2 hours later, they're like, all right, bro, yeah, man, I don't know what to do, and I'm like, yo, dude, like, don't you prepare this stuff? And then their biggest excuse is a lot of time that they don't write the lyrics. You have Siri on this thing called an iPhone. Like, you can use this. Yeah. Like, I'm serious. These are things, like, you're paying good money for a time. You could at least, like, if you're not going to write it physically, like, at least speak it into the phone. Even in Android, they've got Bixby. Like, that's the thing, is, like, you need to utilize your sources to be prepared and make your time most efficient. Those are the times that I have trouble.
Yeah. So how do you kind of function on a day-to-day basis? Do you always have clients scheduled, or are you a lot more flexible in your scheduling? Like, if you were to look in your calendar for like the next 2 weeks, do you schedule a lot, or are you more of like on the whim where a band could call you and be like, yo, we need studio time and like today or tomorrow? How does your whole schedule usually work?
So usually, so basically it's online. You can see my schedule online at ccmstudios.com. And usually a lot of this week, I don't think I have too much besides a couple clients and a couple DJ gigs. But for the most part, I'm open, I'm free. If you call me the day before, we do require that you book in advance, so that way, if I'm not there, of course, the boss is going to give you something free. Like, then at that point, I screwed up, right?
Yeah.
But never happens. Usually the artist is the one to not be there on time or something like that. So that's where we try to make them put it all down up front. Like, all right, this is your time. Like, you have it exclusive to you. This is your time in the studio. So, it's really a day-to-day type thing sometimes with hip-hop. With rock and roll and bands, it's more of like a monthly thing. They will get to you like a month in advance, and they will plan out this day, that day, and then this day we're mastering. Yeah. They know already. They already have the plan.
So have you had any famous, you don't have to like name, well, you could name names if it's not like a big deal, but any famous guys that have come into your studio and recorded? Anyone that like the main population would be well aware of?
Yeah, no, Famous Dex's homie has been down there checking us out and stuff. Then Waka Flocka was down there, recorded with David Custard. And then I'm pretty sure that Lil Wayne was there, but I'm not sure. Actually, that's I probably won't ever know. But I'm pretty sure, yo. I have clues.
What would you say is the biggest difference when you're recording, like, let's say a rock group to a hip-hop group? I mean, there are obviously different tactics to use, different sound design and techniques. What does the overall layout differ like when you're recording those two different genres?
So the difference is really just like how many microphones and how many people are recording. When you're recording hip-hop, the biggest thing is to make the voice match with the beat. Of course, that's where auto-tune does come into play. I mean, you think about an 808 kick in a beat. If the melody is changing, the 808 needs to tune and pitch with that too. Otherwise, it just sounds like it's a bunch of bass in random places. So the thing is you need to do that with the vocals too. Sometimes the vocals, the biggest thing that makes a rap song is the ad-libs and dubbing the lyrics. So they'll go in and they'll say everything right on top of itself, or they'll fill in the in-betweens and go and fill those in with like a or something like that, you know?
One of the big controversies that a lot of people talk about nowadays is auto-tune. Could you explain what that is to some of the audience viewers that might not know what that is, but like they've heard people say like, oh, you use auto-tune like as an insult, but what does that mean specifically?
So basically, auto-tune is the assurance that you're going to be able to keep your vocal on the beat, or basically like in tune and basically in key, or, you know, by music theory, in key. Yeah. So the thing is auto-tune is really questionable sometimes. Like, you don't have to use it, but if you're going to say, now for anybody who's wondering, now you're talking to me as you want me to be your engineer. Okay. I hear your vocals and they're not too good now, but with some auto-tune and some reverb and some production there, I can make your vocals sound like amazing. Just ready to sell for that 99 cents on iTunes. Yeah. Remember that. Absolutely. Your 99 cents, your worth is 99 cents for each single, or maybe $1.20 if you really go all out. But see, like, who's going to spend their money on who's going to spend if they don't do it now for 99 cents, if you don't perfect your voice perfectly, chances are people won't think that you took the time that it deserves.
Absolutely. So what is your personal opinion though on auto-tune? Because to some people they think it kind of takes away creativity, and it kind of makes the artist seem like they're not really doing as much of a job as they should. Like it seems like everything's kind of like handed to them now. But what is your personal opinion on auto-tune and using it in recordings?
I think that using it for recordings is it's really iffy. If the artist needs it, then yes, use it. Because at that point, there are softwares out there that if I bring my little laptop, even with my Samsung Galaxy S8, I can download a version of Antares onto this thing and with my computer and basically run it into a live interface on stage and be auto-tuned, especially if I have good AD. But then at that point, you're really limiting what you can do on stage. So I always make people aware of that. My opinion is I would use it if you can't tell. If it's really done well enough, like if you give me enough time to really sit there. But see, there's a difference between auto-tune in Antares and auto-tune in Melodyne. See, Melodyne is not considered auto-tune. It's called pitch correction. So in that sense, auto-tune is considered like live, like, right? That's just putting your voice in one key and only letting you hit those keys. But sometimes in a vocal, in a really good vocal, you have multiple keys. You have harmonics that are going everywhere and stuff, right? So then that's when you go through and you open up your box, right? Your laptop or your computer, and you see this program right here. And there's like a piano roll that's starting right here, and you see the piano, right? But now you see all your vocals that are popping up, like what keys they were on. Some of them are in between keys. Some of them are not even on the right key. That would be pitch correction, to go in and really fix all of that stuff. And I would have to say that I would say that even the biggest artists like Adele even get put into Melodyne. Are the things that, like, as soon as they release the album, remember, these things don't just, you don't get to take it down and re-upload it. You know what I mean? Like, the biggest labels don't even get to do that. So you need to make sure that what you post, and Adele probably is telling her engineer, like, homie, this better sound good. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Those are multi-million-dollar productions for, in my opinion, to have the vocal not touch Melodyne would be useless in making it a multi-million-dollar production. That's the thing.
So now we're going to go to our most popular part of the podcast, where I ask you 5 questions and we get the answers and then we tally them up. And I think we're at podcast 36 now, so I think once we reach 50, like we all agreed on, then I'll add up the answers and see who the winners are, and then we'll probably try something new for the audience members. I don't know what we'll do. But so for our first question is, out of all the music that's been written in the history of music, if you could have personally come up with one song, what song would it be and why?
I would have to say, oh man, Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden, just because if I was the one to have made that, that would have been amazing. Okay, Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden.
That is probably my best workout song. That's the song that I always work out to. It's just so that if you want to get a good sweat on, you definitely listen to that when you're like running or doing. It's such a great song, and I mean, Iron Maiden's such a fast-paced band, and like my ADD, I enjoy those fast-paced bands where they're just playing super quick and everything. It's so stimulating. But yeah, that's definitely one of their
Adrian Smith solos in every song is just.
Yeah, Number of the Beast too is another one of theirs that I just that's just or the Trooper and everything.
This is all on the same album too. Aren't we talking about one album?
I know
this is one. 8 is High.
Yeah.
Run to the Hills. That's all one album, right? Right?
I think so. I'll have to look that up after this, and I'll leave a link down below or a box down below saying if we got it correct or not. But yeah, it's insane what that one band did, and especially nowadays they aren't as appreciated as they should be, because everyone always thinks about like Metallica or Black Sabbath or any of those bands, but Iron Maiden's kind of left in the
huge crowds still absolutely. To this day. They're in their 60s.
Yeah. So now for our second question, we got, if out of all the artists that have ever been alive, dead or alive, doesn't matter, you can pick either way. If you could perform live with one artist or band, who would it be and why for one show?
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson?
Marilyn Manson, 100%.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't listened to really any of his music besides "The Beautiful People," just because that's been on like TV a lot, and I've kind of heard it. It's pretty good. That song's pretty good, so I might have to give him more of a listen. But yeah, he's definitely been one of those that I've learned a lot of artists through this podcast, so I'll definitely add him onto my list to listen to, because a lot of people have said that he's very good at what he does, and obviously, I mean, he's done a lot of, a lot of people blame him for so much crap that he didn't even do, like, especially like after Columbine and stuff like that. They're like, oh, your music convinced him. But it's like, no, dude, that just makes me want to listen to his music, just to be like, no, you guys are idiots. There's no way that's true. So
he said, I'm pretty sure that in the interview, he said he'd got banned from Denver, actually, from playing here for a while, because he said that if somebody would have taken the time to listen to those kids, maybe they wouldn't have done. They did, like, yeah.
I saw that interview on Bowling for Columbine, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I know. It's ridiculous that they did that. It's like there's obviously you don't listen to that type of music and be like, oh, I'm gonna go kill a lot. It's just so stupid. But okay,
a lot of people have it the opposite. Yeah, they'll listen to that type of music to try to suppress feelings.
Oh, absolutely. Like, in all the artists that I've talked to too, like especially like the really heavy like death metal guys that come on, and then they're like, where do you get the inspiration for that stuff? It's like, it's an outlet for me. Otherwise, I'd be like a crazy person. Like, it's a way that I can express my anger in a positive way. And I'm like, that's what it's all about, man. I mean, it's like, just find other ways to express like your feelings, and that's just so much more productive. So I mean, and most people don't get that. But going on to our third question, out of all the venues in the world, if you could perform at one venue, where would you perform and why? And I have to add a disclaimer: Red Rocks has already won because it got like 8 votes in the first 10 episodes. So then I banned it because everyone was choosing Red Rocks, and I know you're close to that. So I was like, oh, you probably choose Red Rocks. But other than Red Rocks,
I'm pretty close to that, huh?
Yeah,
I think we could see it from right here. No,
yeah,
I'm kidding.
I didn't even know what that was, and then I finally looked it up, and I was like, oh god, that is beautiful. I can see why people are choosing it. But yeah, other than Red Rocks, if you could perform at one venue, where would it be and why?
I would have to say Caesar's Coliseum, or is it called Caesar's Coliseum in Las Vegas?
Oh yeah,
that venue's big.
Yeah,
baby, that venue would be awesome. I'd rock that venue.
That'd be awesome. So now for our fourth question, now we get into the real nitty gritty. Guilty pleasure song. What is a guilty pleasure song that you enjoy that most other people wouldn't get that you enjoy?
Korn, Blind.
Yep.
Really enjoy that one. And then the next most emotional song goes in a completely different route, is Trapped for Me by Deadmau5 and Cascada.
Oh, yeah.
That song like gets me in my feels, makes me cry every time. Yeah. For some reason it's the melody, I don't know what it is.
I'll have to give that one a listen. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. But lastly, guilty pleasure genre that you enjoy.
Ooh, I would have to say it's kind of a genre. It's movie scores. I listen to, when I drive in the car, I'll put on a Hans Zimmer, and I'll just drive to Hans Zimmer's like Time or Inception.
Yeah.
Time and Inception, and with the movie Inception.
You mentioned movie scores before. Have you worked on any movie scores at your sound studio?
See, and that's where I'm trying to go, more or less. My end goal in making music, to be honest, would have to be making movie scores. I mean, I didn't ever see that coming, but I would love to do that. I have worked with the AI Institute before on a couple of student films and stuff, and they would submit them to Sundance, and of course they didn't make it, but that's okay. I see great talent here in Denver when it comes down to the film world and production of film here. There's a lot of serious talent.
So now we got to talk, obviously, about film for like the next 5 minutes, because I find that just so fascinating, and you're the first film person we've had on. But when it comes to making film or putting film scores in music, how does that process work, or how's it worked with you? Is it usually like the director comes in and says, okay, this is the sound that I want? Or do they ever just kind of say like, hey, we'll play the music, or we'll play the scene for you, and then you can kind of decide what music you think would be best? How did that all work?
So it depends on how soon they need to turn it in, I guess, when it was with the AI Institute. But a lot of the time the way it works is they'll give me a concept. They'll say, okay, we want to try to achieve this type of feeling. It's mainly about a feeling, because like, you mute the TV with the movie and it doesn't mean anything anymore. You unmute it and all the music comes in. It's like, okay, now I feel this picture, this motion picture, excuse me. So when they have a film done, they either give it to me with no sound and just the vocals of it, and then that's when I'll sit there frame for frame and start composing little ideas, little things. But for the most part, it really comes down and boils down to one specific composition that is going to land that feeling of the movie. Remember, this composition needs to come up again and again throughout the movie, needs to explain this feeling in several different scenarios. So that's the big part.
Well, what is your favorite film composition of all time?
Interstellar by Hans Zimmer. That composition was just ridiculous. I would also have to say Time by Hans Zimmer. But then also, I don't know, every movie he's done, man, has something new and something so pleasing. Like the cello in the Dark Knight, you know, that sound that's constantly rising. It wasn't the there's this effect that he did in Dunkirk, where it's an ever-rising melody that just loops back down and you never hear it really rise. But that's not the case with that sound in there. There's actually a guitar. There was a guitar making really like a distorted sound, and then he had this cellist for like 6 days. I'm pretty sure he said that they had to go down and down and down, and then they finally got to the pitches, and that's when that sound was made. But those are the things that are so satisfying.
I have two in particular. I'm really a sucker for those like super simple sound effects where they're like super effective though. John Carpenter, in my opinion, is one of the best when it comes to that. Like his on Halloween, just such a simple thing on a keyboard that it's so effective. And if you've ever seen The Thing, just his little, it's like 3 keys. And it's one of the most effective horror soundtracks of all time. It just adds so much together. But my personal favorite it's a super popular one. But in Star Wars: A New Hope, when Luke is looking up at those stars at the end, and then that music that's playing is some of the most beautifully constructed music of all time. It just adds to the scene perfectly. And it's
it was a Russian composer that had made the Star Wars music, right?
John Williams did.
John Williams did.
Yeah.
Did he?
I mean, the Godfather, and I still can't believe that guy's still alive. He's like 95 years old, and he's still making music for people. Yeah, like the latest Star Wars movies, he did it for that. Yeah, it's unbelievable. He's been nominated for more Academy Awards, I think, than any other person in history. He's got like over 30 nominations, and he's won like 5 of them. But it's just ridiculous what he does. Now, to kind of round it off here, where can people find you? Where can they find your music or the bands that you produce? Do you guys have a website, Spotify, SoundCloud? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so basically, as far as the music that I produce for people, some of it you will see, some of it you won't, some of you won't know that it was even recorded there, of course. That's up to the artist, solely them. But as for me, you can find all my music just by searching Luigi OG on Google or Yahoo or Bing, any one of those. And then if you want to categorize it down to your Apple Music or Spotify, it is always going to be that same name, Luigi OG.
Yeah, I'll leave all the links and everything down below, obviously, for everyone to kind of just click and copy and paste, and just so it becomes easier. But do you have any material that you're working on right now specifically for you? Do you have any songs you're coming up with, or are you set for songs?
Actually, right now I'm still in the process of writing an entire album. I've wrote about 5-6 songs now, and I'm working on 6 and 7 that are going to be for my album Rebirth. And this album, see, this is what's going to be different, is I'm going to use my persona of Luigi OG to achieve this rock band that I want to make. I really want to go back and make a Led Zeppelin Beatles style band. Yeah, I'm serious, man. It needs to happen, but something like with those real the Beatles could make a melody that goes from one thing to the next and next, and it's this whole song in 2 minutes.
I always think about like Helter Skelter. That's like the first heavy metal song of all time. And no one gives the Beatles really credit for that. Well, it's like everyone's like, oh, the Beatles are so popular. It's like they invented a genre basically with one song. So it's ridiculous.
They invented multi-track.
Oh, absolutely.
They were the first to basically like say, okay, we're going to bust everything down back to track 1 and keep going. Like that's different. A lot of engineers were afraid to do that. You'd lose tape, you'd lose takes. It's like, dang, but yeah, they really invented a whole new world of creating music, to be honest. And they created the world of having fans like that.
Oh, just those videos of those fans losing their minds and those girls like ripping their eye sockets out just because they were so excited to see him. It's just
so excited they couldn't. People would literally
Yeah.
tear themselves apart. Yeah.
Or like when they were at like Shea Stadium or any of those shows that they did on their first concert, the crowds were so loud that the crowds couldn't even hear any of the music. Some of those shows they said on purpose they didn't even sing. They just acted like they were playing music, and the crowds were so loud that it didn't matter. They couldn't hear anything. And I was like, that's the dream job right there. You don't even have to perform. You just have to act like you're performing, and you get paid all that money just to do it. But I mean, it's ridiculous. We could spend 10 hours talking about the Beatles. They're just. I mean, they are pop culture.
Could you imagine you're on stage and you're like, I can't get them to shut up. They can't
Might as well just go with it, yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
fuck, just give up.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Just sit here and play. Let them cry for an hour and a half.
So, do you have any shows coming up too around the Denver area that people might be interested? I know we've interviewed 2 bands already from the Denver area, so we probably have a decent audience there. So, any shows upcoming that people could find you at?
Yeah, no, so a good upcoming show that I'm going to be hosting here soon is going to be it's going to be Turnt Up Tuesdays at the Lincoln Street Station. I'm going to be doing those shows as well with Be More Entertainment. And then from there, I'm going to be doing another thing. Original Kickback Thursdays is something that I've been starting. And then as well as for that, we're only going to do one day out of the month from now on, so that way we can get a sufficient amount of promotion towards all the DJs and all the people involved, so nobody feels like they were rushed. Nobody feels like they could have added more, given more time. Now we will have the truth speak. Now we will see if we can get this show going.
Absolutely. So, I mean, man, here's how this works, man. You tell me anytime you have, like, when your album's done, you give me a shout out or you message me on Facebook. I will post it. I will mention it on here. I will get you as much exposure as I can. We have a decent amount of subscribers now, so it can really help you out. You have any shows upcoming, you let me know. I post it and I talk about it on here. You don't even have to ask me twice. I love doing this. I love helping promote people and their music and their anything that they do in life. It just brings so much thrill and joy to me talking to you guys. And I mean, honestly, I wish you all the best. You are more than welcome to come on the show any other time, whether it is to promote your new album or anything else you want to talk about. It's an open door policy. You just let me know like a day ahead of time, and then I can schedule you in. But I mean, it was really, really great having you on the show. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we close it up here?
Other than that, I just want to tell everybody to have a wonderful day. Thank you to what's your company name and all that?
Oh, it's just DD on the Spot.
Oh, ED on the Spot?
DD on the Spot.
DD on the Spot.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Big shout out to DD on the Spot, and everyone, I want you to have a wonderful day. If you're watching this, make sure to click and subscribe down below for DD on the Spot, and look up Luigi OG, and you may find some cool things.
Absolutely. Everyone give him a look out. I mean, this guy, he really seems like he's got a good set plan, and he really looks like he's taking it to town. So, I mean, everyone go and give this guy's music a listen. Even if you don't like it, just give it a listen. You never know. So, this is DD on the Spot. Ryan Johnson signing out. Have a great night, everyone.